Yeah, Group B is the big group, and it's the United Arabs playing the West Indies now. Just because the West Indies are playing here, you're expecting a win for the West Indies, but the West Indies will have to absolutely annihilate the United Arab Emirates just to make sure that they can get through to the quarterfinals. Because if Ireland beat Pakistan in their game, Ireland go to third, and Pakistan will have a better run rate than what the West Indies are. So it's big in Group B, and you know, playing Pakistan, anything can happen as we've seen throughout this tournament. Well, that's exactly right. And if they have to go hard, that opens the door for the United Arab Emirates too, because they're playing in Napier, West Indies United Arabs, and Ireland are playing Pakistan in Adelaide Oval. So there's 3 hours difference there between those two venues. So the West Indies can't just sit on their laurels and just see how Pakistan are pacing themselves against Ireland. They've got to make the run from the start, from ball one. So yeah, the United Arabs, if they bowl well, they could just about bowl the West Indies out for a cheap score. Yeah, well, Ireland's a bit different. They've got a better batting lineup than the other associates, but most of the Ireland bats have played county cricket in England, and a couple of them have represented England as well, and a few have been picked up in all those T20 competitions around the world. So they've had a little bit more experience out the higher level, whereas the United Arab Emirates, Afghanistan, Scotland don't play the big boys. And when you're not facing 140, 150 attacks, well, you're going to be light on when you come into a big competition like this, because it's a huge step up. And I can remember when I was a year and a half out of Shield cricket, I went back and played. This was back in 1996, 98, I think it was. Yeah, 98. It was just a huge difference just to go from grade level to an international type standard. The pace is heart-wrenching. So these guys have found it tough, especially on these bouncier wickets over in Australia and New Zealand. Well, Marlon Samuels is a quality batsman, and you'd be expecting him to make a huge score against the UAE. But Chris Gale, he's been disappointing this tournament. I think he made that 200 against Zimbabwe. He was very lucky in that first over. I thought he was out LB, but that's the way the game goes, and it was exciting innings. It was a great innings. But if you look at the West Indies lineup, none of them have really dominated this tournament. Simmons has made 100, but their batting lineup is very fragile, and if they get Samuels and Gale, if he plays early, they'll be under a lot of pressure, because they've got young Carters coming in out 4, I think it would be, and then Ramden and Simmons, all inexperienced players. So it's not going to be easy for the West Indies tomorrow, and I'll be expecting the UAE to bowl first, and hopefully they get early wickets and really put the pressure on the West Indies. It does play a role, and it'll be on the back of the minds of the Pakistanis as well. So, they'll be worried about Ireland, and they'll want to make sure that they don't lose to Ireland, because they'll be worried about how the West Indies are going to go against the UAE. But the West Indies too, they'll be expected to win this game. They'd be disappointed with their tournament, and the West Indies sometimes can rock up and not seem focused, and they think it's just going to happen. So the UAE, if the West Indies aren't switched on, maybe a little upset here, but I'm not expecting it. From Pool B, Pakistan, India, South Africa, and I can't see the West Indies being picked out, and I think Pakistan are going to beat Ireland. So I think we'll see the Test playing nations in there. I don't think we're going to see an upset in Pool B, but I could be wrong.